The galaxy had always been a place where order reigned supreme. For centuries, the powerful alliances of aliens kept peace across the stars. Codes and rules governed every aspect of life. There were unspoken laws on how to wage war, when to make peace, and even how to interact with other species. It was a well-organized system, with no room for chaos. The galaxy's leaders, the ruling council of the most advanced civilizations, had ensured that nothing could disrupt their control. The idea of someone or something breaking these rules seemed impossible. But that was about to change. A small, unknown fleet appeared at the edge of the galaxy, just as the galaxy was in the middle of a delicate political negotiation. The fleet didn't belong to any known species. It wasn't part of any galactic faction. It didn't even have the usual traits of a spacefaring civilization. The ships were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They were sleek and powerful, built for combat but designed in ways that defied all the rules of conventional warfare. Their hulls shimmered with an unfamiliar energy. There was something otherworldly about them, something that hinted at a force far beyond what the galaxy could comprehend. The first signs of their arrival were the waves of energy that rippled through the galaxy's communications network. Systems flickered, and military channels went silent. The leaders, from the distant worlds of the Andromeda Coalition to the far reaches of the Sharek Empire, began to panic. No one knew who these new arrivals were, or what they wanted. The council gathered to discuss this new threat. The leaders of the galaxy's most powerful races, aliens who had lived for centuries, experienced war, and built empires, were now shaken. They had never faced such an unknown force. The human fleet was unlike anything they had ever prepared for. Their ships did not follow any known patterns, nor did they have any respect for the galactic treaties that kept the peace. This sudden arrival was an affront to everything the galaxy held dear. The human fleet didn't send any messages, no demands, no threats. They simply moved into the galaxy's space without asking for permission. Their ships flew boldly, cutting through space at impossible speeds, positioning themselves at strategic locations without hesitation. Their approach was direct, and it left the galaxy's military forces scrambling. Among the stars, the humans were a mystery. No one knew what they wanted or why they had come. The alien factions watched from their capitals, preparing their defenses but unsure of what to expect. Some feared the humans were another invading force, while others speculated that they were seeking to trade or form alliances. But none of these theories seemed to hold up. The human fleet did not behave like any race they had encountered before. Commander Leora of the human fleet stood at the bridge of her flagship, a towering vessel that stretched across the stars. She looked out over the vast emptiness of space, knowing that the galaxy's future was about to change. Her fleet had come not to ask for permission, but to show the galaxy that it was time for a new order. The galaxy had been too comfortable for too long. It had been too easy to follow the rules, to play within the lines. The humans would not do that. Leora had not been sent to negotiate. She was not here to make peace. The human fleet had come to assert their place in the galaxy. It was not a matter of diplomacy, it was a matter of survival. Humans had learned through centuries of struggle that survival came from bending the rules, not obeying them. They had learned that sometimes the only way to survive was to fight back, to stand firm, and to make their own rules. The galaxy would learn that lesson now. As the human fleet continued its silent march across the galaxy, the Council began to react. The first move came from the Sharek Empire, one of the galaxy's most powerful factions. They sent a fleet of battle cruisers to intercept the human ships. But the humans were already waiting for them. Without warning, the human fleet launched a surprise attack, decimating the Sharek forces in a matter of hours. The battle was swift and brutal, unlike anything the galaxy's forces had ever experienced. The Sharek fleet, once thought to be invincible, was defeated before it even had a chance to strike back. The galaxy's leaders were stunned. This was not how the galaxy worked. There were rules to war, to diplomacy, to conquest. But the humans didn't care about those rules. They had come to make their own. As the galaxy's leaders scrambled to respond, a single message from the human fleet echoed across the stars. It was simple, direct, and sent with absolute certainty. "We don't follow your rules. We make them." The message sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. For the first time, the galaxy's leaders were forced to confront the reality that a species had arrived who did not recognize their authority, who did not care about their established codes. The galaxy had learned that, in the face of the humans, its old rules meant nothing. The galaxy had no idea what was coming next, but one thing was clear: this was no ordinary fleet, and these were no ordinary invaders. The humans had arrived, and they were here to change everything. As the human fleet moved deeper into the galaxy, the real battle had only just begun. The galaxy would soon learn that it could not defeat the humans by following the old rules. The only way forward was to face them on their terms. The galaxy would have to adapt, or it would be crushed beneath the weight of its own outdated systems. The struggle for the galaxy's future had just begun. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. The human fleet, after their initial victory over the Sharek Empire, moved with a chilling calmness through the galaxy's most fortified sectors. The once untouchable alien civilizations watched in silence, unsure of what to do. The rules that had governed galactic conflict for eons no longer applied. The humans didn't fight to win within the established codes of conduct. They fought to break the system, to prove that survival wasn't about playing by the rules, but about creating your own path. Commander Leora stood on the command deck, watching the galaxy unfold before her. The humans weren't here to conquer. It wasn't about expansion or claiming territory. They had come to teach a lesson. They had come to show the galaxy that no amount of power, no ancient alliance, or vast military force could stop them. The galaxy would bend to them, or it would break. There was no middle ground. The first test came when the Arctur Coalition, a group of 4 technologically advanced alien races, sent a fleet to challenge the human forces. They sent their best warriors and their most sophisticated weapons, confident that their combined strength would be enough to force the humans back. They thought they knew how to fight. They thought they understood strategy. But they had never fought like this before. The humans didn't wait for the Arctur forces to make the first move. They didn't sit back and allow the aliens to dictate the terms of battle. Instead, the human fleet attacked before the Arctur forces could even organize, striking with precision, speed, and overwhelming force. There were no traditional battle formations, no predictable strategies. The human fleet shattered the Arctur defenses with a brutal, unrelenting assault that was more like an avalanche than a well-organized military campaign. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Every move was calculated, but no one could anticipate the next strike. The Arctur forces were left in disarray, unable to adapt to the humans' unpredictable tactics. Their ships, once the pride of the galaxy, were quickly overwhelmed by the sheer audacity of the human assault. They fought back, of course, but it was clear that the battle was already lost. The Arctur fleet was shattered, its leaders humiliated. As the battle raged on, the message from the humans became undeniable. They didn't care about the rules of war. They didn't care about tactics or strategies. They were there to win, and they would do it by any means necessary. The galaxy's other powers watched in stunned silence. It was one thing to hear about the human fleet's initial attack, but seeing it in action was something else entirely. No one could understand how such an underdog race had become such a threat. The humans were no longer just an unknown species. They were a force that had to be reckoned with, and the message didn't stop there. Commander Leora made sure the galaxy understood that the humans were not interested in taking prisoners. They weren't here for negotiation or compromise. They were here to make their point clear. The galaxy had never seen strength like this, and it was time for the old order to fall. The next few days were filled with tense moments and swift, brutal skirmishes. Every time an alien fleet attempted to challenge the humans, they were met with the same crushing force. The Galactic Council tried to form alliances, hoping that their combined strength would be enough to push the humans back, but they had underestimated them. The humans didn't need alliances. They didn't need treaties. They didn't need anything but their own willpower and their relentless drive to show the galaxy that rules were for the weak, not the strong. In the midst of the chaos, something even more dangerous happened. The galaxy's most powerful factions began to fracture. The realization that the human fleet could defeat anyone, even the most established powers in the galaxy, began to create distrust among the alien species. The Arctic Coalition, once a unified force, split into warring factions, each blaming the other for their defeat. The Sci-fi Empire, humiliated by their initial loss, began to question their own leaders. The entire galactic structure, built over millennia, was beginning to crack. The humans had not only defeated fleets, they had shattered the very foundation of the galaxy's political system. And all the while, Commander Leora watched, her eyes cold and calculating. She knew that the more the galaxy's leaders fought among themselves, the more power the humans would gain. It was not just a matter of physical strength. It was a matter of control, of perception. The humans had come to change the way the galaxy viewed power. The old rules were no longer enough to sustain the galaxy. The humans had proven that it was not the size of the fleet, the number of ships, or the might of the weapons that determined victory. It was the will to dominate, to push forward no matter what. As the galaxy's leaders tried and failed to organize, the human fleet continued its march. They were a force that did not care for diplomacy. They were a force that would not be stopped by threats, or by alliances, or by treaties. The galaxy would have to learn to live by the humans' rules, or it would perish under the weight of its own traditions. And still, the battle continued. Each victory by the humans was another message sent to the galaxy. Survival was about strength, about the will to break the old systems and forge new ones. The galaxy's leaders had only one choice left: adapt or fall. By now, the galaxy understood that the humans would not be leaving. They had not come to negotiate peace. They had come to reshape the galaxy in their own image. And for the first time, the galaxy was afraid. Not because of the human fleet's firepower, but because of their relentless pursuit of power, their complete disregard for the old ways. The humans didn't follow the rules. They made them. The galaxy had always been a place where the strongest forces reigned, where the most powerful species set the rules. But as the human fleet pushed deeper into the galaxy, the alien civilizations began to realize that the old ways were no longer enough. The balance of power was shifting, and the galaxy had no idea how to stop it. Commander Leora's tactics, her philosophy, and the humans' approach to warfare had ignited a firestorm. The old powers could no longer hold their ground. They had to change or risk being completely obliterated. The turning point came when the unified military alliance of the galaxy's most powerful races launched their counteroffensive. For weeks, the galaxy's leading species had secretly rallied their forces, pulling together every weapon, every ship, and every fleet they could muster. They believed that by overwhelming the human fleet with sheer numbers, they could break the will of humanity and restore the established order. But the humans were not like any other species the galaxy had ever faced. The first wave of the Alliance's counteroffensive came in the form of a colossal fleet. More than 1,000 ships, each one a warship of immense power. The galaxy's leaders had pooled their resources, believing that their combined might would crush the humans once and for all. But they had underestimated one crucial factor. Humans didn't fight by the same rules. As the massive fleet approached the human forces, the galaxy's leaders watched in anticipation, thinking victory was within their grasp. But what followed was something they had never expected. The human fleet didn't fall back. They didn't retreat, nor did they try to evade the overwhelming assault. Instead, Commander Leora gave the order to charge. The human ships powered forward, closing the distance between them and the Alliance's forces with terrifying speed. The Alliance's ships, with their larger numbers and superior firepower, were meant to win the battle. But the humans had something they did not: unpredictability. The human fleet weaved through the Alliance's forces with an agility that seemed impossible. Their ships moved like lightning, dodging and weaving in ways that defied the laws of combat. The galaxy's fleets, used to operating in highly organized formations, struggled to adjust to the chaos unfolding before them. They had trained for battles that followed certain expectations, but the humans didn't follow any of those rules. The human ships didn't hesitate. They attacked from every angle, using every weapon at their disposal. Energy beams, missiles, and tactical strikes rained down on the Alliance's forces with ruthless precision. The Alliance's warships, which had once been considered invincible, now seemed helpless against the human onslaught. In the midst of the chaos, the galaxy's leaders watched in disbelief as their forces were slowly torn apart. The Alliance had overestimated their strength and underestimated the sheer ferocity and adaptability of the humans. Every time they tried to regroup, the humans struck again, leaving their forces in disarray. The humans didn't fight by the rules. They fought to win, and they didn't stop until the enemy was broken. And it wasn't just the battle tactics that shocked the galaxy. It was the humans' unyielding resolve. The fleet didn't just fight for victory. They fought for something greater. They fought for the idea that power came not from tradition or rules, but from the will to shape the future, to bend the galaxy to their will. The humans had proven that they were willing to sacrifice everything for their vision of a new galaxy, one where they held the reins. The tide of battle turned decisively in favor of the humans. With each passing hour, more and more ships from the Alliance were destroyed, and more of their soldiers fell. The once proud military forces of the galaxy's strongest civilizations began to crumble under the relentless pressure of the human assault. The turning point had come, and there was no going back. As the battle raged on, the galaxy's leaders were forced to confront a terrifying truth. The humans had not only proven that they were capable of defeating the galaxy's greatest forces, but they had shown that the galaxy's old systems were weak. The humans had come to bring about a new order, an order where strength wasn't defined by numbers, wealth, or ancient traditions. It was defined by the willingness to break the old rules, to create new ones, and to fight for what they believed in, no matter the cost. The leaders of the galaxy were no longer debating how to stop the humans. They were debating how to survive. Some factions, too proud to accept defeat, vowed to continue the fight, hoping that sheer desperation could turn the tide. Others, more pragmatic, realized that the galaxy would never be the same again. The humans had not just proven their strength, they had shown the galaxy that their power came from their refusal to obey the rules that had kept the peace for so long. Meanwhile, Commander Leora knew the battle was far from over. Her fleet had won a decisive victory, but the galaxy's leaders were still in denial. They would continue to fight, continue to resist the change that was sweeping over their world. But the humans had already shown them that the rules of the old galaxy no longer applied. Every day that passed made it clearer. This was humanity's galaxy now, and the galaxy would have to learn to live by their rules, or be destroyed. The galaxy's leaders, once so confident in their power, were now in a desperate race against time. Could they adapt to the new reality that the humans had introduced, or would they be wiped from existence, unable to change? The turning point had come, and the galaxy would never be the same. It was no longer a question of who was the strongest. It was a question of who could survive the new order that humanity was creating. In the shadows of space, as the battle raged on, the galaxy waited, uncertain of what the humans would do next. The pie. Galaxy, once united by the invisible threads of power and tradition, was now a broken place. The humans had torn through the ancient systems with brutal efficiency, and the galaxy's leaders were left scrambling. Their pride, their decades of dominance, and their carefully constructed alliances had all been shattered by the sheer audacity of one species. Commander Leora's message was loud and clear. There would be no peace unless the galaxy learned to adapt to the new reality that humans were creating. The rules had changed, and anyone who refused to adapt would fall. With their fleets in disarray, the galaxy's leaders now faced a dilemma unlike any they had encountered before. The old systems that had held them in power for so long were no longer effective. Alliances began to crumble, and the old rivals, once content with the status quo, turned on each other. No one knew whom to trust anymore. The very fabric of the galaxy was beginning to unravel, and the humans, despite their small numbers, were the only force that remained unified. The chaos that followed threatened to engulf everything. Commander Leora, however, wasn't interested in the petty squabbles of the galaxy's ruling factions. Her eyes were on something far greater, the galaxy's heart. She knew that to change the galaxy, she needed to control the power centers, the worlds that had been the source of the galaxy's wealth and influence for millennia. The humans had proven their strength on the battlefield, but now they needed to prove they could wield the power of the galaxy itself. As the galaxy's leaders met in secret to plan their next moves, one thing became increasingly clear. They would not be able to stop the human advance. Every fleet that had been sent to confront the humans had failed. Every strategy had been shattered. There was no conventional way to deal with the human threat anymore. The galaxy's most powerful factions began to wonder if perhaps the old ways were truly gone, but this realization was not immediate, nor was it easy to accept. The first reaction came from the Drellians, an ancient and proud race whose fleet had been annihilated in the early skirmishes with the humans. They sent emissaries to the humans, desperate to make a deal. The galaxy's old order was collapsing, and they were willing to negotiate with the humans to secure their place in the new order. Their emissaries were given a simple ultimatum: adapt or be destroyed. The humans didn't offer peace, they offered survival. They told the Drellians, and every other species in the galaxy, that they had two choices: bend the knee or be crushed under the weight of human resolve. The galaxy watched as, one by one, factions began to turn on each other. Trust evaporated, and the political landscape became more fractured with each passing day. The once unified Galactic Council, which had held sway over the galaxy's fate for centuries, found itself powerless. The humans had done what no one thought possible. They had shattered the illusion of unity and left the galaxy's leaders scrambling to preserve their own interests. On the surface, it appeared that the galaxy's old powers were beginning to collapse into a new kind of chaos. But beneath the surface, something more dangerous was stirring. The humans had not simply won a few battles, they had exposed the weaknesses in the galaxy's leadership. The galaxy's rulers had been forced to confront the harsh truth. They were no longer the rulers of the galaxy. They were simply remnants of an old order that had outlived its time. As Commander Leora and her fleet continued their relentless march through the galaxy, she knew that the real battle was not yet over. The galaxy's leaders were slowly beginning to understand that their once unshakable power was now crumbling. Their attempts at unifying against the human threat were failing. Every time they tried to organize a counterattack, the humans responded with greater force, greater unpredictability. There was no single target to strike, no one great leader to bring down. The humans weren't fighting like anyone had expected. They didn't need to crush a single faction or destroy a central power. Instead, they were slowly dismantling the very foundations of the galaxy's rule. And while the galaxy's leaders continued their struggles, Commander Leora was preparing for something far more significant. She had already conquered the battlefield, and now it was time to conquer the minds of the galaxy. Humans didn't just win battles, They created realities. They didn't obey the established order. They redefined it. The galaxy had to either adapt to this new order or perish. It was that simple. The galaxy's leaders began to realize that if they didn't come together and face the human threat with a united front, they would fall one by one. But the more they tried to unite, the more fractured the galaxy became. Old enemies turned against one another, unable to set aside their long-standing rivalries. The humans had already achieved something no one had ever thought possible. They had forced the galaxy into a corner where only one way out remained: submission. Humanity's march across the galaxy became unstoppable. No matter how hard the galaxy's leaders tried to rally their forces, no matter how many armies they sent, they were met with the same overwhelming resistance. The humans were everywhere, on every front, in every system, and on every world, where power had once been held by the galaxy's elite. The galaxy had learned that no matter how hard they fought, the humans would never stop. The galaxy would either learn to live under their rule, or it would fade into obscurity. As the galaxy's political structure continued to collapse, humanity's influence spread. Entire star systems, once controlled by powerful alien factions, began to accept the humans as the new rulers. The humans didn't come with promises of peace or diplomacy. They came with power, and they made it clear that this was the only language the galaxy would understand. It was no longer a matter of who would win the war. It was a matter of who would survive the new order. And as the leaders of the galaxy faced their inevitable downfall, they knew that they had no one to blame but themselves. The rules of the galaxy had always been built on the idea of dominance and control. The humans had come to break that idea. They had come to reshape the galaxy into something new, and the galaxy had no choice but to watch as their old world crumbled. The struggle for power was over. The humans had won. The galaxy, once a beacon of order and control, now lay in pieces. The old factions, the empires, the powerful coalitions, all struggled in the shadow of the human fleet. Their leaders, broken by defeat and forced to watch as their civilizations crumbled, began to understand that there was no going back. The humans had reshaped the galaxy in their own image. The rules had been rewritten, and the old powers had either adapted or disappeared. Commander Leora stood at the helm of the flagship, gazing at the expanse of the galaxy before her. Her fleet had accomplished the unimaginable. They had torn through the fabric of the galaxy's power structure, exposed its weaknesses, and shown its true fragility. And now, the galaxy was hers for the taking, not through force alone, but through the unwavering belief that the galaxy needed to change. The humans were not conquerors in the traditional sense. They were revolutionaries. They had come to dismantle the old, stagnant ways of the galaxy and replace them with something far more powerful, a new order. The old powers had crumbled, and the galaxy was left with a choice: bend to humanity's will or fall into ruin. Across the galaxy, leaders from once great civilizations gathered in secret. The few remaining factions still clinging to the old ways were beginning to realize that the humans had already won. The time for open resistance had passed. There were no more alliances to form, no more armies to rally. The humans had demonstrated a power that could not be ignored. The galaxy would either accept the new order, or it would be swept aside entirely. The message from the humans was clear. Peace would be achieved only when the galaxy acknowledged that it was time for a new way of life. The humans were not here to rule in the same way the old factions had. They were not interested in holding the galaxy under an iron fist. No, the humans had come to lead in a way that demanded respect. It was a leadership that was earned through struggle, not diplomacy. Through sheer determination, humanity had proven that it would not bow to any system but its own. And so, the old factions were forced to come to the table, one by one. The once mighty Sharek Empire, broken by defeat, reluctantly agreed to an audience with the humans. The Drellians, once proud and unyielding, now sought to negotiate their survival, and the Arctic Coalition, once so confident in its military superiority, finally recognized that its place in the galaxy was no longer secure. They had all learned the same lesson. Humanity did not follow the rules. They made them. Commander Leora addressed the galaxy's leaders in a council meeting that was held on a neutral world, the location carefully chosen to symbolize the new era. The council was no longer an institution of power. It was a collection of surviving species, each struggling to find its place under the new order. The human fleet watched from orbit, a silent reminder of the power that now controlled the galaxy. "We do not come to negotiate terms," Leora began, her voice calm but forceful. "We come to establish a new order. You can either accept that order, or you can be left behind. The days of the old ways are over. The galaxy must adapt, or it will perish." The assembled leaders of the remaining factions exchanged uneasy glances. They had hoped for a different outcome, but deep down, they knew that humanity had already succeeded. The humans had shown that the galaxy could no longer function in the old ways. The treaties, the alliances, the centuries-old rules, they had all been shattered in the wake of humanity's rise. There was no going back. The galaxy would either bend to this new order, or it would be swept aside in the wake of humanity's unstoppable momentum. The first to speak was the leader of the Arctic Coalition, a once proud figure who now seemed small and defeated. "What is it you want from us?" he asked, his voice trembling. "What will we have to sacrifice?" Leora's gaze was unwavering. "Your power is no longer your own. It is now part of the new system we have created. We do not seek to rule you as you once ruled over others. We seek to bring equality, a true balance of power, but it comes at a cost. You will adapt. You will join us in shaping the future of this galaxy." The leaders of the remaining factions looked around the room, all of them struggling to accept the truth. They had no choice. They had seen the power of the human fleet and the unyielding determination of the human people. There was no escaping. Humanity had already won, and the only way forward was to accept the inevitable.